Hi, Cassandra. Welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hi, Ty. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We are so excited to have you on the show. We're going to talk about your debt freedom journey, and it is an amazing one, I might say. So, first, can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So, my name is Kassandra Dasent. I am a project manager and consultant. I'm the CEO of Bridge Tech Enterprises, and I'm also a financial wellness engineer, as I like to refer to myself. And I speak a lot, talk about the concept of holistic wellness and how establishing pillars in your life in order to be able to create wealth in more than just a financial perspective.
I love that. We're going to definitely talk about that a little bit more, but tell everybody about how much debt that you were in, what type of debt was it, and how long did it take you to pay it off?
Sure. So back in 2009, I had reached a point where I had $55,000 in consumer debt, which was broken down mainly by credit cards, car loan, personal loans, and a business loan, a business deal that went sour, essentially. So all told, that was over a 10-year span. It was incremental. It wasn't just an overnight thing. It took 10 years for me to get to that financial cliff and then realize I had to do something drastic about it.
Wow. So let's talk about what did you have to do drastically? So talk about the first moment and the first steps that you took in order to pay off this debt.
Sure. So I'll talk from the mechanical perspective of money because there's the mechanical perspective of money and then there's the spiritual, holistic, mental part of money. So from the mechanical standpoint, I realized that I had to decrease my spending. And one of the drastic things I did, which a lot of people would not want to do willingly, is I ended up giving up my condo, two-bedroom, beautiful condo. It was like, I think, 1,300 square foot condo. And I moved in with a roommate situation for the first year of my payoff plan. So that it was very difficult, giving up my nice things and all the things that was bought with credit. And in order to conserve as much money of my take home pay and throw that at my debt. So that was a major shift for me. Another thing was earning more because I wasn't earning enough. I was earning an okay salary, I think 45 to 50K around that time, but I was making less than my debt. So I knew I needed a bigger shovel. So I read books. One key book, which was The Secrets of Six-Figure Woman by Barbara Stanny, helped me to realize that I was a chronic under earner. So with other books and just other tips, I started to really document my work life and my contributions. And then I was able to get double digit raises year over year from that point forward. And that catapulted me into six-figure territory. But I'll explain maybe a little bit later how that happened. So that was happening. I was hustling. So I'm a singer songwriter and producer. So I've worked with some names in the music industry for a long time. So instead of kind of giving my service for next to nothing, I started charging as a back vocalist, charging as a singer songwriter. I started my own band. I released my own album during that time. So it's weird that I'm paying down debt and I'm creating more work for myself, but that ended up giving me more income to throw at this debt. So that was on the income side. And then again, coming back to the cutting expenses, I understood what it meant to live according to your values, spending consciously, really recognizing that I'm purchasing things that really aren't a need. It's not going to help me with my goal. I can defer them and understanding that this is just for a time, right? I'm committing to this debt payoff and it's just for a time, a moment in time. If I want to, after the debt's done, I want to go back to spending a little bit more, I could have, right? But funny enough, as I started to understand really was driving my urge to spend and spend on credit, once I figured out what was going on from a spiritual and holistic point, I never reverted back. So once I got paid, once I paid off my debt, I never backslid, so to speak. I never experienced recidivism, which is to go back to a state of being that was prior to where you are now. So that's on the mechanical side of the money.
Well, I love that. We're going to dig deeper in that. Talk about the moment that actually led you to doing all this, because I thought that that was pretty powerful when you explained part of your story. Talk about the moment that made you go, I need to do something about this.
Yeah, it wasn't definitely a moment that I created. It was a moment that the creditors and the lenders did for me. So, creditors will give you as much uh, much room to kind of put a noose around your neck as possible until they feel that they see that you're no longer credit worthy or you're a risk. So I was given, $15,000, $20,000 credit limits while I'm earning $45,000 salary. And in early 2009, I went to go apply to extend one of my credit cards limits, and they denied me, citing that my income and the rate of my utilization was just too high. So I was now considered a credit risk. And at the time, I was working as a corporate credit analyst. So I immediately knew why they refused me. And realizing that, okay, well, if they don't want to extend me credit and they view me as a negative consumer, what does that really mean? So I really literally took one day, looked at all my statements, charted everything in a basic spreadsheet, and finally acknowledged that, okay, I'm $55,000 in debt and I have to do something because no one's going to save me. Because at that time, I had been divorced since 2006. So I was living on my own as a financially single woman. I have no Prince Charming. I have no one that's going to come and help me. My mom's not going to bail me out. Trust me, a West Indian Trini woman is not going to bail you out. so, and I just realized that, okay, I can't keep living like this because I have nothing to show for all the years of work. And it didn't make sense. So I, started going on the internet, reading blogs. At the time, JD Roth was, happening at that time. And, decided to just come up with start with a basic plan and said, okay, I think I can pay this off realistically in 5 years maybe. And just started from there really slowly. I made mistakes. I wasn't perfect. Because I'm starting to completely try to change my life. And I was fighting against literally a couple of decades worth of bad habits and bad belief system that I had brought upon myself. So what really helped me to realize is that I had to take responsibility. So I couldn't pass off my mistakes on anybody else but me. Sure, I could plead ignorance for maybe the first, 10 years of my life growing up in the environment that I did. But as a corporate credit analyst, I know what it means to be fiscally responsible. If I'm managing multi-million-dollar portfolio for a company and I can't manage my own money, I have to take ownership. So that's what I did. I took ownership. I sat down and I actually started to chart back really, really far back how money affected me, how it really showed up in my life, whether good or bad. And I was able to really retrace it as far back as this one particular moment when I was 10 years old. And my mom and I had just returned from a trip to Trinidad to visit family. And we came home like the Sunday, and the Monday she gets laid off. She's a single parent. She was also up to her neck in debt, and I didn't know that. But as a 10-year-old, I was scared. When she came home and she was crying and she told me, well, she lost her job, I understood the implications of that. And that started a really, really difficult chapter in our lives from a financial and emotional standpoint. So that really marked me, for me to still remember distinctively the scene. I could still play the scene out in my head. And so I said to myself, I never wanted to want for money ever in my life, but I went about it in the wrong way. I didn't learn about wealth building. I didn't learn about investing and, using index funds and letting money make money or real estate. I wasn't around people and energy and information that fed me in that direction, unfortunately, So now 2009, it's like I had to teach myself, and that's what I did because I just knew that I could do better. And that's what really was at the core of me being able to literally transform my financial life, which transformed my life, period, in so many ways. So I think another pivotal moment was the same year I met my now husband. So I'm remarried to my husband, and we met that same year. And we were in a long distance relationship, and he was living mainly in the US, but also he's from my home country of Trinidad too. And as our relationship was getting more serious, that was more fuel to my personal fire to say, I don't want to bring this debt as like a ball and chain, literally, into this new relationship. And at that, 2 years in, proposed to me, and we're now planning a wedding, So that I made a commitment to myself that I didn't want to get married with my past debt. And we got married October 27, 2012, and I became debt free November 21st, 2012. So that was my why. Like, that was my real why, is because I wanted a different life, and I got it. I did it.
It's time to get your life insurance together with Legal & General America. As one of the nation's leaders in low-cost, high-quality life insurance to over 1.3 million families, we know how to protect you. For nearly 7 decades, we've been the first and only carrier to add 10 more years of security to our policies for a total of 40 years of life insurance coverage. If you need basic protection until retirement, that deal is perfect. Legal & General America makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy. Our agents are standing by to help you determine the best coverage to fit your family's needs. Visit hisandhermoney.com/LGA to get started on your journey toward financial wellness.
You said a few things that made me go, because I know that there's a lot of people that were in or are in your past situation, right? One of them that you said was that you made years and years and years of bad habits. Talk about that, because there are a lot of people that have bad habits after bad habits, 1 year after 1 year. And before you know it, they don't even think that it's possible for them to be able to do what you've done. So talk about, how did you honestly shift? I know there was a mindset change, but how did you actually believe that you can do better and you did better?
Right. So I talked already about, okay, I made that shift, but let's kind of double back as to what led me to the point where I needed to shift. So as mentioned before, I did the internal work to understand what drove me to behave that way. And that's the step that so many people want to skip over, because that's time consuming. To actually, you want to just fix the problem and think it's going to get solved. But the problem is up here, and understanding literally each little cog that brought you to this point. So I had to really take that time, and instead of wanting to go and quickly just put glue over or put a Band-Aid over my boo-boo, I really sat down and questioned myself and said, where did I go wrong? And where I went wrong was trying to validate myself through things. For me, again, bringing back to the story I told you about, losing everything as a 10-year-old, that marked me. It scarred me. It scared me. And it made me start to build a relationship with money that was negative from a very long time. But if I hadn't taken that time to sit back and think about, where did I go wrong, or where did life steer us wrong, I wouldn't know the root of it. So I encourage you to take the time to question yourself. And there's going to be pain. You're going to feel guilt. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel resentment. I went through all the emotions. It's, when you go through grief, when you want to change yourself fundamentally, because I'm fundamentally no longer the same woman that I was in 2009. A decade later, it's almost like I'm unrecognizable. I can't even relate to that woman who got herself into that debt. And to be able to sit there and say that about myself and look back at, the old Kassandra and say, who was she? It's because I really recognize that I have to go through that pain and search myself and come to terms with myself and be honest and humble. So I don't know when that pivotal moment will be for each and every person. I don't know what circumstances are going to come and coalesce to bring you to that point, but it will happen if you really at least say to yourself, I know I really don't want to live like this anymore. I know, even if I don't know how to do better, I know that I have to do better. Not even, it could be, even it may not even be at a point where you have that confidence in yourself to say that, oh, I can do better. You don't even need to get to that point. You just need to own it enough to say, I know I have to do better because I'm not satisfied with where I am in life. Now, who can I talk to help me? Where can I go to read something to shift me? Now that's when you have to have that inner drive and build that inner drive to search for your answers. And I'll repeat it again. You'll make mistakes. You'll slide back 2 steps before you're able to come 3 steps. That is frustrating. It's normal. But the more you keep pushing forward is the less you will slide back, to a point where it becomes your new normal. It becomes your new habit. It becomes your new mental state of mind. And you acknowledge to yourself that, you know what? I'm worth all this effort. I'm worth the results that this effort is taking me.
I love that. Talk about is it a three-prong approach that you take in? Talk about each one of those and break them down.
Sure. So first one was cut expenses. And I mentioned, a drastic decision I made was to literally give up the very thing that I lusted after, which was a beautiful maintained apartment, a condo, and move in for the first year with roommates. Um, I don't know for others, but for me, that was very humbling. Not only that, I cut back on my travel. I was the woman who would buy a first class ticket to Paris, and I've done it. Okay. Without thinking, okay, well, how am I going to just pay that? No, I just wanted to travel in luxury, and I didn't know about, travel hacking. I don't even think it was in vogue at that time. But I just realized that I had to look at my spending and be honest with, okay, I don't need another pair of shoes. I don't need to go to this restaurant. I can learn to cook for myself at home, because that was a thing with me that, oh, I don't want to cook. I don't have time to cook. No, if you're not busy doing other things that are spending money needlessly, you have a lot of time to cook now. So where are my priorities? I decided to look at what was really a priority and put my money toward those priorities. My priority was getting out of debt. So that meant everything else was up for cutting. And I slashed my budget by more than 50%, So that's the first prong. The next prong was earn more. And I think I mentioned the book already. I'll say it again. The Secrets of Six-Figure Women by Barbara Stanny. And that made me admit to myself that I was a chronic under-earner, that I was not earning at or above my potential. And how I was able to get double-digit raises after 2009 and actually hit the six-figure mark as an income earner was, at the time I mentioned I was working as a credit analyst. There was an opportunity with my company at the time to take on a role in tech. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I don't have any experience in computer science or whatnot, but no one wanted to take the role because, people were scared of it and it was new to our company. So I convinced my boss, send me to boot camp and I'll figure it out. I'll make this work. The reason I did it is because I knew that if I was able to break that barrier and be a success in that role, my life would never be the same. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So I became like an EDI administrator, which is like electronic data interchange documentation, and started with that. And then I think I started making $60,000 the next year. And when I came to the US, that's when I really saw my income just skyrocket. I jumped $30,000 from one job to another job. And that threw me into, and again, no degree, no experience in STEM, but as they say, the rest is history. But I was motivated because I wanted my debt gone. And I knew I had the innate ability to do better. So I just tried to follow my instinct, And then the last thing was, again, I think it comes to understanding that for me, wealth is holistic. I talk about, when I'm online, about 4 pillars. And my wealth is built on spiritual, physical, mental, and financial. If one or more are not in congruence, your wealth is stunted. And I started to realize that, okay, if my spirit isn't in alignment, if my mental health and well-being isn't strong, isn't anchored, I'm not able to focus on making more. I'm not going to be able to concentrate at work. And that's what happened actually at one point. I actually had to quit my job before I started my company because I am a long distance caregiver. I support my elderly mom who lives in Montreal. And I also, with my husband's support, in part my mother-in-law. We have a stepson who lives in Trinidad. I have brothers who are older and who are sick. So we have a lot of pull on our budget. And also trying to be a high performer in engineering. I was working in software engineering at my last job. That's extremely demanding. You're on site for 12, 16-hour days. And as the only woman of color leading teams of engineers across the country, it was a huge, huge responsibility. And, you know, I'm actually surprised I toughed it out as long as I did. And I realized that, you know what, there's no job on the planet that's worth your mental and physical well-being. So I stepped back and I quit last February, and I decided, okay, I'm going to take a sabbatical. Let's see what I can do. And I came back online. I had been with the personal finance community since 2013 and kind of took a time off, came back, and then it just kind of started to blow up, you know, and I thank God. Like honestly, like I am a believer and I thank God for what he's done and what he's moved in my life. But he will move in your life when you're ready to move too, you know? So, and I was ready to make these shifts in my life. And the reason why 10 years later, I can look back and say we're in a much healthier position than when I started. And I never went back into consumer debt. We only have our mortgage. We buy our cars cash. We are well below our means. We're able to afford to care for our family is because I never forgot the journey. I never forgot how I felt. I never forgot the difficult times. I never forgot. And some people do forget, and then, you know, they get comfortable, and there's a risk in getting comfortable, you know, with your situation. And so that's another piece of advice I'd give to your listeners is don't get comfortable when things start getting easier for you or getting better for you, because life just has a way of slapping you back on your behind. You know, that's just how it is. So never take anything for granted. Always keep, you know, once you've begun a fiscal path of responsibility, stay with it, because it just makes your life so much easier. It makes the trials and tribulations that you will eventually or inevitably face that much smoother to navigate.
So good. So good. I absolutely love this. So you mentioned that you moved out of your condo to move in with someone. You also got another job and you also made more money. What were some of the other things that you did as well to knock out this debt?
So I'm a singer-songwriter, and I've been trained classically since the age of 6. So up until that point, I'd been pretty much giving my talents and gifts for free. So again, growing up in the church, you know, it's an environment where you're taught to serve, right? This is servant leadership, and it's something I practice to this day, no matter what I do. So in the beginning, I felt a bit conflicted. Well, should I be paid for this talent? And then I prayed about this, and God really told me, you're in a situation where there is a need. You're asking me to help you deliver you from this need. You know, my gift I gave to you, it's not to squander. Be responsible with the gift. That's what he said, be responsible with the gift. So then I started charging, and literally all the money that I was getting from whatever gigs I was doing. At the time, I was still like modeling part-time. So all that extra cash, all that extra hustling was getting thrown on the debt. I did not take a penny from that and, you know, play with that. I really said, okay, this is for a specific purpose. Here you go. And I didn't stop tithing. That was one thing, is that I didn't stop tithing. I wouldn't say I tithed 10% during that time, but I did never not acknowledge where this was really coming from, you know, for me personally. So that was the last element, which, you know, all together, it just created this literally like a huge avalanche of a snowball that's what cut off a year and a half of my initial 5-year plan.
That's awesome. So talk about that moment when you made your last debt payment.
So, you know, my husband and I were literally like in front of the computer, press click, and I'd have to go back to a spreadsheet to remember which debt it was, but it wasn't a credit card, it was another debt. But we clicked it. All we did was high five and went about our business. Like literally, it wasn't anything super. We went to dinner after, but I was just like, okay, next, what's next on our you know, financial domination plan? What do we need to tackle now? I was just so anxious to get out of debt, because for me, that was just ground zero. That's not the end of my financial journey. That's actually the beginning, you know, a level playing field. So I was excited to get to debt freedom status, consumer debt freedom status, so that we could now start maxing out retirement accounts. We bought our first and second and third homes. You know what I mean? We started building our financial future and
Talk about that. Yeah, take your time and talk about that because I think that that's so good. A lot of times people don't know what to do after they get out of debt. So talk about some of the things that you and your husband have done.
Sure. So the first thing that we did was we started, because we're kind of coming from behind. I'm 43, my husband's 43 as well. So by the time we got out of debt, we were like 37-ish, right? So I'd been saving a little bit for retirement, nothing to talk about. My husband had zero. He had no money. He had no debt, but he had no savings. So we started, I had a solo 401k at the time because I was consulting. He's always been self-employed. We opened him up an SEP IRA and we started maxing that out every year. Up until last year, we maxed out every single year. So, just from that alone, we have over $200,000 in retirement assets right now, just sitting, you know, and earning the interest. So there's that. Bought our SUV to spec cash. That was like $22,000. Just went into the dealership. I went online. It has all my specs. Did the test drive. Negotiated. Okay, here's my account. Wire the money. Like that is an amazing feeling when you can just go in and get what you want and not have to worry and get the harassment about trying to apply hoping you're going to get approved for the loan. None of that. In and out. Give me my keys and let's go. I think the most powerful thing for me is being able to take care of my mom. I talked about my mom and I immigrating from Trinidad to Montreal. She's had a really, really hard life. And for me to be able to kick in whatever her pension can't make up for her living expenses, and she's in a senior retirement home due to her health, that for me is powerful. Everything that she invested in me, whatever she could give to me, now I'm financially able and stable to do this. And I'll tell you, our family expenses are $15,000 a year. That's a lot of money that could be going in to making us even more money. But for me, that's very important to be able to say, I can take care of the people that I love the most because they really need it. They're in a position that they need it, Yeah, property. So we were living in New York City at one point, and then I took a new job. I was transferred for a new job out in Michigan. So at the time, the market was still down. So we bought our townhouse and then flipped it 3 years later when we're living in Florida now. And we ended up getting like, I think a $50,000 profit just because of the market going up so much. And it was a hot area where we were living in. So literally, we literally made $50,000 and that's the market. So I'm not going to tell you that this is what's right for you or not. I'm not saying that it was just a question of luck. We could have moved anywhere within the country based on the work that I do, but I saw an opportunity that, okay, this is an area that I think because of the companies that are coming in, it's going to turn, it's going to, increase. So I looked at it from a very big vantage point. I didn't just say, I just want to buy a house. We were living in Lansing, who lives in Lansing, Michigan, right? 100,000 people do, but many more because the jobs came, the tech jobs came and drove the real estate market up. So we took our cut and we pieced out to Florida because we live a remote lifestyle. So took that money and bought, our current condo, and we're looking to buy a second property and rent our townhouse that we're in right now. This is all possible literally because of that one decision that I made 10 years ago to stop acting like a fool with my money and doing better by myself and consequently by my family.
I absolutely love that. Well, kudos to you and your husband. You guys have done some amazing things. Now, can you tell everybody how they can stay in contact with you, where they can find you at on the web?
Yeah, sure. So my website is KassandradAsent.com. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram at Kassandra Dasent. I'm also on Facebook at Minding Your Money KD. And if you're on LinkedIn, just look up my name on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk with you on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we have all the links in the show notes below. Thank you so much, Kassandra, for coming on our show and sharing your story.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you.